Okay, it is 3 o'clock and welcome to the July 10th Pre-Planning Commission meeting. We do not have any continuances, miscellaneous old business items. We go right to new business with 6 items. And the first one is PC 2078. It's a final subdivision, the final subdivision plat for Wolcott and Van Risen. And
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Gabrielle with Planning Department. This was the application that was continued from last month's meeting just because the applicant was unable to attend the public hearing. So we wanted to give them the opportunity of being present to participate. So nothing has changed. We've only updated the staff report with the date and agenda item.
okay, thank you. I'll do a quick, should have done a roll call at the beginning. I didn't have my trusty notes for doing these virtual meetings. So I'll do a roll call for comments or questions on this, and this will also be a roll call on this item. Commissioner Burns.
Commissioner Burns, present. No questions or comments. Commissioner
Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, present. I do have just one question. I was just curious, maybe 2 questions. One was about the order. On page 4, the top of page 4, it was just talking about the applicant is working on the HPC approval, and once the final plat is recorded, the HPC application can move forward. Is that typically the right order of how things are done, or is it the other way around?
Well, unfortunately, this applicant kind of started things out of order to begin with because they did the improvements, then recognized there was an issue. So now we're kind of taking corrective actions. So the HPC can't approve the substance of their request, which are this shed location, the design of things, until it's corrected from a zoning perspective, meaning that the plat has to be recorded. So I don't know that we would say this is the normal way anything's done, but it is the most appropriate corrective path forward.
Okay, thank you. And just my other second question was, I think the one, let me see, same page, I think. It talked about encroachment, same page. Oh yeah, same page, just one paragraph down. I was just curious, what is the encroachment agreement? What are you agreeing to exactly?
Sure, great question. The encroachment agreement is basically something that someone enters into with the city because they have something extending or encroaching into our public right of way. The standard one is like steps or stoops, especially downtown, where the front property line and the right-of-way line are also the same as the building frontage. So the stairs and steps that project out from that front are actually within city right-of-way. It's an agreement that basically relieves the city of any liability for responsibility for paying to reconstruct if we have to remove them because of utilities or something we need to get into our public right-of-way to use. We're not responsible, and it's basically the owner understanding that it's not ours, it's theirs.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Commissioner Strassen.
Commissioner Strassen, I'm present and I have no questions or comments.
Alderman Russell.
Alderman Russell, present, and no further questions.
And my only question, and I don't think we answered this last time, is the applicant aware that one of the conditions of approval is to repair the sidewalk?
Yes, they have seen the staff report and have been made aware of that. We did ask for them to weigh in on the condition of the sidewalk after the workshop, I guess it was, and they kind of indicated, yeah, it's all right. It's kind of like the rest of the sidewalk, but upon, which is the truth, but upon inspection, that's not consistent with the standard we would want it to be in. So we're asking, but they have seen the report.
Okay, great. Okay, so no other comments or questions from anyone on this? All good? Okay. Second agenda item is PC 19-889. It's the combined preliminary plat and final site plan for Bloomfields. Oh, and this is the one that we're doing over, right?
Correct. This is the reconsideration. Once again, Gabrielle at the Planning Department. This is the reconsideration that's actually being brought forward by staff upon recognizing that the complete language of the recommendation for the parking modification and the resulting motion didn't reflect the entirety of the request and what they were actually asking for. Last month, as you recall, we voted in favor to actually hear the reconsideration. So that's what we're discussing now is the merits of the request. Since that was the sole focus of this application in the staff report, we tried to kind of elaborate in more depth and detail what units the modifications being requested for and the merits of that request. Scott Waxter and I actually had an interesting conversation in crafting the staff report as to what it meant to reconsider. In the HPC's rules of procedure, it actually says that if there's a motion to reconsider and it's approved, that the entire approval becomes null and void. So it's kind of like you're going back to start, stage one, and none of the decisions that were made still are valid. You're actually revisiting the plan. Our Planning Commission rules of procedure do not have that language in them. So we are just reviewing it for the context of this modification. Now, if the modification were to be denied, it would obviously have ripple effects through the design of the project. So it's not completely independent and isolated from the rest of the project, but we don't have to consider it in the context of that whole plan approval. So that's what we've kind of provided in the staff report, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, I haven't had a chance to read the entire thing, but in your report, do you say what the language was, what specifically the motion was?
We provided the staff report from the previous hearing, which the motion was basically, I don't know if the verbiage was exactly the same, but it referenced the same unit types that were in the modification recommendation.
Okay.
So it was on page 13 of, I guess, the attached staff report. It said that the staff recommended approval of modification to 607B1, table 6071, to modify the minimum number required of parking spaces for one-car townhouse units, which were at VLA and VLB. And I don't know if the wording, I think it was Commissioner Burns who made the motion. I don't know if he used the exact same words in the same order, but it was consistent with that.
So that's the one, and you have written in here what it needs to be changed to.
Correct. And in our analysis, we talked about the modification, and even in the previous report, the modification applying to one-car garage units, which are the villa townhouses, as well as this detached cottage unit, which has a one-car detached rear garage. So that was elaborated on in the report.
So basically just adding that qualifier. Okay.
Of the cottage unit.
Okay. All right. Let's go around and do a roll call for questions and comments. Commissioner Burns.
This was part of the so in all cases they're exceeding their Gabrielle, is the required spaces a target that you can go above or beyond or below, or remind me how that works?
So we have a minimum and a maximum parking requirement. We're asking for a modification to the minimum. So this is the minimum number. It's not just a target. It's the minimum that they have to provide on site is 2. There is a maximum. Actually, for single family dwelling units, there might not actually be a maximum. In some cases, like shopping centers, we have a maximum number of parking spaces to try to keep the impervious surface down.
Okay, can we not count on street spaces?
So that is one of what they're asking as part of their compensating. This is the minimum, the modification is to the minimum number of required on-site spaces.
On-site, okay.
Right, exactly. So not totality, and that's what we factored into the decision-making about supporting it, is that there is more parking in the world. It's just not on this lot they have.
Yeah, the county uses the same logic, so yeah, that's, it seems a little, it seems intuitive that they should be able to use on-street spaces so that there's still room for guests and deliveries and things like that. So you don't want to approve something that where the minimum just meets including the off-site spaces just meets that minimum. So, and in each case, they have a fair amount of extra spaces. So I'm good.
Okay. Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manelis, no question or comment.
Commissioner Strassen.
Commissioner Strassen, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Alderman
No
Russell.
questions.
Alderman Russell, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right, next item on our agenda is PC 20374. It's a preliminary plat for Riverside Corporate Center, the Center Farm.
Okay, this is the part of the Riverside Corporate Park. The exact location of the property is across from Aldi, if you're familiar with that, on Gas House Pike. The two things of note, for most part, all their conditions of approval are basically technical cleanup for their plan. But the two things you will note is with access, that lot 410 has an existing curb, that they are going to be reevaluated when that lot is eventually developed and has a site plan to evaluate if that should be eliminated or be in use. The other thing is they are not part of the APFO testing. They have a developable rights and responsibilities agreement out there that there's a certain amount of money that is owed at this time. And engineering has reached out to them, and the fees will be paid both by Project Synergy and by the owner of the development. The purpose of the plat itself is to, the previous preliminary plat had 12 lots, and as we said in the staff report, now there's being changed to 8 lots, where lot 410 is going to be made up of lot 407A and the original 410 lot, make that one larger. And the other side for lot 409 is actually 4 lots combined to make a large lot for the site plan that follows this. And that's the purpose essentially of the plat, is to create these larger lots for Project Synergy. And that's all I have.
And Pam, there were no changes after the workshop?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No lot, not for the plat for sure, and not in the site plan. There wasn't any changes either.
Okay.
That's coming up.
Okay. This is just the plat, right? So
This is the
we'll do
plat.
a roll call. Commissioner Burns.
Hey, Pam, they're not adding any lots, right?
No, they're just reducing the lot numbers to make these larger lots.
It's like an administrative change. The site distance issue down on Gas House Pike, is that part of this or part of the site plan?
It's actually not part of either.
Okay, so that's going away?
I'm sorry, what?
That's going away?
Yes, it really doesn't apply to this development and this project because it is off-site and they are not required to do any more off-site improvements. So that is something that will have to be dealt with between the city possibly and the Wren project. And if the developer, the applicant here decides that they're going to do anything for a little bit of site distance, they will look at that themselves, but they're not required to do anything for that issue.
Then on the payment that I made such a fuss about last time, I wish I'd asked more questions. The that in my mind, at least invalidates the DRRA because they haven't done their responsibility by making that $1.2 million payment yet. And they're going to pay that. At workshop, we were thinking in terms of that payment would have to be paid for prior to final plat recordation or building permit or something like that. Can you or can Gabrielle, do you know where that money, by not having that money in hand, has that hurt anything? In other words, I'm trying to figure out how important their I'll still use the term being in violation of the DRRA by not making the payment on time, how important that is to the city's coffers. Is that money that would just go into a general account and earn interest, or would that be paying to reduce a bond payment that was borrowed to build gas house pipe? What's the city lose by not having that money today?
I don't know that Pam or I don't know if Chirian, I think, is with us, has any insights on that. A letter was sent out to the original developer, so the money that has not been paid is actually not associated with this individual applicant for Project Synergy. It's tied to the original developer who entered into the development rights and responsibilities agreement. So a letter has been sent to notify them that it is time. We have not proposed attaching that because it's not related to this individual project. It's really a separate obligation of the DRRA. We've sent a letter from the city to the developer to make them aware that they need to submit that payment to us. And we are.
It was 30 days.
I don't believe, I think there was further correspondence after the 30 days, but that separate issue.
Well, now I've got some more concerns then from what you just said. So you're saying that there's no nexus between the violation of the DRRA and this project? Whose signature to the DRRA? Is that the person's signature to the DRA? Doesn't that go with the land records, the responsibilities? And if so, wouldn't the site plan be put on this property? I'm trying to understand the relationship between who didn't pay and who's going to benefit by selling off this lot.
Sure. So the developer was the original developer was the signature on the DRA. That's who that commitment is with. After talking with the legal staff and the engineering department, it was concluded that it was a separate matter distinct from the site plan. I think that's all as far as I feel I can explain. I know Scott Waxter will be at our hearing on Monday and was part of those conversations, so can maybe get some additional.
I'm only one vote. My vote hinges on understanding this.
Sure.
So to the extent to which that can be explained, that the responsibility, and again, my concern is, doesn't the responsibility of the DRA go with the property, whether it's successors or assigns? And I know this is a very important project to the county and to the city, and I get it, but it just, one of the bugs I've had in 40 years of development review has been non-conformance to conditions. That's a pet peeve. Thank you.
Sure. No, understood. Yeah, we will make sure Mr. Waxter is prepared to answer any questions regarding that as he has been in the discussions.
And the other thing is how, if it's relevant, how important is not having the money?
Sure.
So if it's totally irrelevant, then why should I make a big stink about it for such an important project?
And I believe the payment was anticipated to be provided within 60 days of the letter that was sent out. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manellis, no question. Just a comment. I am, just to tag on to what Commissioner Burns says, I am curious about that whole nexus and process and what's going on with the payment and who's responsible and what happens if it's not paid. That's it.
Commissioner Strassen.
Commissioner Strawson, I have no questions. Thank you.
Alderman Russell.
Alderman Russell, with regard to the questions and the payment, I think it's kind of simplistic to say that the whole DRA is invalidated because of a failure to pay when the city has not taken any action for that to go to court to be adjudicated or whatever. I think it's kind of an assumption that we're not in a position to make, and I would say if there's going to be a no vote based on that, I would want to hear clearly articulated what legal basis within the land management code that's based on, and then I also would just question the relevance of the information as to what the impacts may or may not have been had the money been paid, and what role we would have in that, if any at all. So I just think we need to sort of distinguish those questions away from the other stuff. But as to the plot, I have no questions.
And then for me, kind of following up on this discussion about the payment, on the workshop, in the workshop staff report, you did say, though, that the contributions must be made prior to issuance of the first building permit. So that still stands? No?
Yeah, there's one payment that does need to be paid. So page 4 and 5 of the report establish the payments. There is one payment, and that's a contribution to the Monoxy Boulevard Phase 2 construction that in the DRA was actually assigned to the individual lots and buildings that would be constructed. That NCI has contributed already, but the project synergy, the site plan for that application would be required to pay approximately $437,000 based on their peak hour trips. So that would still is prior to the issuance of building permit. The item or improvement that is past due was an initial contribution. Was a contribution to Gas House Pike. That was supposed to be paid prior to building permit issuance for the first 5 years of the project rolling, and then the balance was to be paid if they hadn't met that 1.4 million within that 5 years, which it wasn't met within the 5 years, so they owed that balance.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. It's two different. Apples and oranges. Okay. Before we go on to the next, any other issue? I can see all of you. Hollywood Squares. Okay. All right. I guess we're good with that one then. Next item on our agenda is Project Synergy again, but this is the final site plan.
Yes, and like I said, there was no changes that they made on the site plan. As you know, there's parking that's a two-phase step for them. And they also, we've noted the payments and stuff that is required by developer and Project Synergy. A lot of their notes are also technical in nature. However, we do have a note that in regard to the DRA to update note 23 in regard to that. There's a site distance to address that we want cleaned up for the entrance out of the site off to Progress Drive there. We want to make sure that it's to AASHTO standards. They are to submit their fee for the stormwater quality and quantity waiver. And I believe the rest of them are more technical in nature, just to clean up their notes. They will also to provide us with the Property Owners Association approval of their elevations.
Okay. We'll do a roll call for questions and comments. Commissioner Burns?
No comment. Question.
Commissioner Manalis?
No comment or question.
Commissioner Strawson?
Commissioner Strawson, what is the stormwater quality and quantity waiver? I don't remember talking about that before.
They submit an application for a waiver to the engineering department, and the engineering department would have to explain to you more what that all involves, but they do have to meet certain thresholds, I guess, to be granted a waiver. So that
What
is
is
what
being waived?
So
to
it's actually a waiver from the requirements for ESD, which is the environmental site design. So prior to, and I don't know the date of the adoption of the state stormwater management, stormwater was treated, this is a super simplistic explanation,
Okay.
stormwater was treated through big ponds. The stormwater regulations changed, and now they require ESD, environmental site design. So you start seeing the little swales with lovely little plantings in them and those sorts of things spread out throughout the development. Developments that had plans previously approved before those stormwater regulation changes and had constructed ponds that were already sized to support their development can apply for a waiver from that component. So it's not a waiver of stormwater management, but a waiver of the current requirements for ESD.
Okay.
As you would end up, and we have some developments that don't qualify for that waiver, but that had previous plan approvals, who now are trying to go back and build ESD into their designs, and it's really challenging. I mean, it does upend a lot of things. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Alderman Russell. Oh, yeah. Alderman
Yep.
Russell.
Alderman Russell, I'm good, thanks.
And I don't have any questions or comments. So, but there's one from Commissioner Burns. The floor is.
I'm sorry, I brought the issue up on the wrong plan. This plan does have condition number 12, which says revised. Note 23 just said they're subject to. It currently says DRA effective May 28, 2009. So staff requires that note to be elaborated upon, saying the development is subject upon the DRRA. So if for some reason, well, anyway, I think I'm satisfied with that condition, given the nature of this project. So never mind. I'm going to back off a little bit on my issue, so Scott doesn't have to be too concerned, unless somebody else brings it up.
Okay, great, thank you. So we're going to move on. Next one, it's item E on the agenda. It's HPC 20774, zoning map amendment for 636 Solar X Court.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Lisa Morozic-Murphy. This is the Historic Preservation Commission's application for the zoning map amendment, Historic Preservation Overlay Zoning Map Amendment for 636 Solar X Court, historically known as Linden Grove. This application came in through a demolition review. Nothing has changed since the workshop. The staff report has been expanded in some areas with respect to the section on boundaries and the section on the consistency with the comprehensive plan. And then we've provided some additional documentation for the backup. But otherwise, nothing has changed. Also, note the property is individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
You said it is?
It is individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's do a roll call. Commissioner Burns.
No questions or comments. That's good.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, I haven't completely read this yet, but I was just curious. Do we know, I think the last time we met on this issue, there was a request for an extension to collect, I guess, information. Do we know what that information that they would, do we understand how that information in any way would impact, you know, the requests made by the applicant?
This is Lisa. I don't know what exactly that information would be, so I don't know how it would impact. But I think from our perspective, being listed on the National Register is pretty clear in that it because those criteria mirror the city's criteria, that that has been met. But not knowing what that information would be, I couldn't say specifically.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only question.
Commissioner Strawson.
Commissioner Strawson here. So my question is kind of along the same line, and what's the process or procedure if the property owners, I mean, can they come to, sorry, this is my dog Bug. Can they come to the meeting and request a continuance? Or only the applicant, only the Historic Preservation Committee can request a continuance?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because we know that they're going to ask for that. And so what's the process that we have to be prepared for Monday night?
Well, the commission, the planning commission can continue the case if you hear from the property owner that they are requesting that, and you know, find reason to continue it. You can certainly do that. At this point, you could choose to do that on your own without the applicant requesting it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Russell.
Alderman Russell, I'm trying to remember what the nature of the information was. Did it have to do with this thing about their internal controls that caused them to, was that the thing?
This is Lisa. I don't know that I'm entirely clear on what sort of information was going to be submitted that would be relevant to the application.
Yeah, I mean, I think they can gather all the information they want on internal controls. I'm not sure how that would be relevant, but you know, obviously we'll listen to whatever they have to say. I thought that's where my brain was going. I just wanted to make sure I was recalling that. The only other comment is I remember this estate when the only thing out there was Solar X, and it was just stunning. Still is.
Okay, I just have one question as a clarification on this being on the register. So it was accepted or put on the Register of National or Historic Places in 1987. So how does that work? Once it's on it, it stays on it? Does it need to be reassessed and reviewed to make sure it still meets the criteria? Because it's been 33 years.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I don't know that there is a process probably for delisting if buildings are demolished or other reasons why it would no longer meet the criteria. I don't know of any specific cases of that happening. We did look at what was in the 87 nomination and compared it to what is present on the site today, and there's been very little change to the exterior, at least. But that is not to say that National Register nominations can't be updated over time. We are going through the process of having the National Register nomination for the Frederick Historic District, which covers downtown, being updated as we speak. It probably happens more often with districts because, you know, boundaries and things like that can change over time. But if a property is intact and basically the same as it was at the time of the nomination, there wouldn't really be a reason to reevaluate it for the National Register.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wasn't sure how that worked.
Madam Chair, I do have one more question. From the workshop, I recall that one of the things that the property owner stated was that they didn't believe there was any what was the word? Any historical encumbrance on the property because of a condition that was on a deed from, you know, like in the mid 80s, from that owner to the person that they bought the property from, that had been released or extinguished or something, and therefore they thought that there was no longer any historical encumbrance on the property that they were bound by. Is there anything about that agreement that has relevance to the decision, the criteria that we have to consider here? Is that something that we need to look at, or is that just something that they're using
No, that deed restriction, that was a,
That's what it was. Okay.
yeah, that was put in place by a previous owner, and it was put in place basically giving review of changes, authority to review changes to the property to the Maryland Historical Trust, but the Maryland Historical Trust was not a party to the deed at the time. And they, in their evaluation, when it was brought to their attention, found that there was a technical issue with the deed restriction and it could not be enforced. Not that the property did not have historic value, and they actually, in their correspondence to us, said, you know, it's a really important property, we hope you can protect it, but the means was not to do it through the deed restriction, which would not found to be enforceable. So the deed restriction was not related specifically to the National Register listing, and it doesn't have any bearing, its elimination doesn't have any or extinguish and
Right.
yeah, doesn't have any bearing on whether it meets the criteria for the National Register or for the city's designation program.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to follow up on that, we talked about the existence of the historic preservation overlay in the city of Frederick, the ability to designate new historic districts, properties, overlays since 2005, I think it was. So it's been a number of years since the city's had this authority.
And this is Lisa, and the demolition review ordinance has been in place since 2013.
Yes, I recall that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this one? All right. So that takes us to our last agenda item, item F. And this is the zoning map amendment for 515 South Market Street, PC 20186.
Okay, this is the first hearing for a zoning map amendment, which no vote will be taken. This property, as you recall, earlier, a year or so ago, came forward to zone part of the Mount Olivet property to R8 in order to build townhomes. They have now reconsidered their project, and they are looking at the same property area for their senior housing development, and moving that and relocating it on that property. They want to return it to institutional, which permits the senior housing to be built there. And so it's a little more than 12 acres to be rezoned back to institutional. They will not be subdividing. This will be a leased property from the Mount Olivet Cemetery. I don't know what else I can tell you except that they will have a private drive into the development off of Prospect Boulevard instead of a public streets as they had for more of an intense development. And they are still showing that they will have an emergency exit drive through Mount Olivet with an easement agreement there. And that's all I can think of at the moment. And like I said, this is first of two hearings, so.
Okay, Commissioner Burns.
Yes, I'm sorry, I wasn't muted. The question, the highway noise overlay, is that finding made at site plan, subdivision, or zoning?
It's done at site plan, but the property now being developed is outside of that overlay. So it won't impact this senior housing development.
Okay, do we have a picture of what they're planning to do? Or is that something you just have?
They only provided a sketch plan.
Oh,
I don't believe I'm sure they provided a look at their housing.
Yep. Right here.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, very good. So none of those areas outside the like there's no open space stuff. It's just green space, right? Outside of the.
It's still Mount Olivet Cemetery. They could bury people there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm still laughing on that comment. Commissioner Manalis.
In fact, that's a good use for. I'm sorry.
Oh, that was bad. That does not go in the minutes. Okay.
So I haven't read this yet, but my just quick question off the top of my head is, does the 2020 comprehensive plan that's still being done and the zoning map does that have any bearings on this? You know, as we review this, even if this is one of, 2 public hearings? That was my only question.
Well, I don't know specifically what the comp plan now is showing for this property, but if it is still showing that this is R8 property or residential as a base zone underneath the institutional, then there would be no change.
Yeah, and the comprehensive plan the new comprehensive plan won't be adopted before this goes through those couple of hearings likely. And even then, the discussions about what the result will be of the adoption of the comprehensive plan in terms of whether we would follow up immediately with the comprehensive rezoning or if we would go through those area planning processes and work on kind of individual rezonings. So I don't anticipate that there'll be any impact resulting from the comprehensive plan that would impact this decision now for a while.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Strawson.
Commissioner Strawson here. So all of that being said, is the only way that they can build the project that they want to build to rezone it back to institutional?
No, I believe
Why are we?
it's conditional. Is that correct, Gabrielle? Conditional for R8 for senior housing?
There is a conditional use that could be applied for under the Zoning Board of Appeals Authority for senior housing in the R8 zoning district. I think the IST zone gives them more flexibility in terms of design of the project than as the conditional rezoning route or the conditional use route. I'm sorry.
And I think it's also too that Mount Olive is still going to own this property. It's like, they might have a long-term lease, but if it does eventually find that they want this land back again, they would demolish this and discontinue this. So it kind of goes with the cemetery.
True, I know, and I know everything that Gabrielle just said about the new comp plan not going into effect for a while, but having that last workshop has made me think differently about this. So that's all.
Okay.
One of the discussions with the comprehensive plan too was removing the institutional as a land use category. So
Right.
I don't know that we would get rid of, and it's something we will continue to discuss, getting rid of the institutional zone, but just not designating its land use for targeted areas, but allowing it to be a little more floating like it's intended to be. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Alderman Russell.
I just have a question as to any architectural review that the Planning Commission might have eventually on institutional versus conditional R8.
I don't believe there is any
So in the institutional zoning district with the site plan, it would be subject to the performance standards of section 407. And one of the performance standards is the building and urban design standards. So that's section 604 of the LMC, where they have to look at the land use type and incorporate certain design items into their elevations. So in comparison to the conditional use, unless there's something specific, and I don't think there is in the conditional use criteria themselves, if it were zoned R8, there wouldn't be, look real quick. So the conditional use criteria for section 861 in the R8 district don't include anything regarding architectural or design elements. So with it in the institutional floating zone, they're getting more flexibility in some cases, but we're also getting more oversight authority in terms of the design with that section 604.
That is exactly the information I wanted to know. Thank you.
And I just had, it's kind of a follow-up to what Commissioner Strawson. So it's like a twist on that question. If they wanted a higher density, if they wanted to do a higher density than the R8 with senior housing, could they still do it as a conditional use under the R8, or would they have to change to the institutional?
So in the R8, they get one residential unit per 3,000 square feet of lot area. They're not proposing it to be its own independent lot. So we would, maybe look at having to subdivide it. I don't know if they have total acreage.
I guess it's,
Well,
would they be allowed the density that they wanted if they wanted more than the R8? And switching to institutional, there's not a density cap on it, right?
correct. How many total? Sorry, just trying to figure out. So they have 150 units are what's proposed, and then 90 rooms. So the density is a function of units versus like the nursing facility rooms. And at R8, they would be allowed, I think the acreage of this area is approximately 12 acres. They would be allowed 175 units, and they're proposing 105. But then they've coupled it with kind of the assisted living facility, which is beds, as a nursing facility. It would be close. They might be obtaining more in through the institutional. Try to look.
I was curious, and I was thinking too that would just be easier on them, then they wouldn't have to deal with the density caps.
Correct, with the institutional.
Right. So again, but under R8, if they didn't change it and they went with the conditional use, the density caps would apply.
Correct. It'd be about 175 units, I think.
Would the ZBA have the ability to change that cap to lower it? Is that something they could condition?
I think the ZBA does have pretty broad oversight authority, just in general. So if in keeping with their overall purpose and intent, to not, create negative impacts on surrounding neighborhoods and those sorts of things, they probably could, if they made a finding that was directly related to some sort of potential negative impacts that could be experienced. The conditional use criteria of 861 establish a density limit, but there's nothing, I don't think, that would preclude them from being tighter than that density limit. I don't think it's a given.
Okay. So either way, we get some. Either way, there's some control that we get or give. Okay.
Any final comments or questions on this item? Commissioner Burns? No? Okay. That actually wraps it up. Any other comments? Anything else before we adjourn? And Commissioner Burns, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, in general, I continue to be very pleased with the way the city has not missed a beat, with the exception of one meeting, keeping the development community needs met. The county had its first planning commission meeting yesterday. They had 6 cases, and it went 8 hours. It was started at 9:30, ended at 5:53. And then I had my BPAC meeting starting at 6 o'clock. So I had a fun day, but it was on a WebEx, which was horrible. But this Microsoft Teams platform is spectacular. It's like high dense. We have to watch how we look, because it's so it's such a great platform. It's so well operated and managed. So I'm just I'm often one to gossip in a negative way, and that's a terrible thing. You should never do that. But I also want to, when I see something good, I want to make sure it's job well done. And make sure Joe gets to know this.
Well, job well done to you guys. I mean, between this and the comprehensive plan, I hope that your lives were otherwise boring because of everything going on, and that this was like a nice distraction. And Barb's shaking her head. She had plenty of fun. But you guys have been. I mean, it's been a lot of time and a lot of energy. And Barb, you've done a fantastic job running these meetings.
Everybody.
You really have done amazing.
Oh, and our chairman too. She's been incredibly consistent given all the details she has to deal with. Right now I'm having withdrawal from not having the workshops, but I'll get over it.
That was very strange. But I will tell you all, if you feel like shopping, there is, you can come to the mall in Columbia. We are open, and we are having about half of our regular traffic. So everybody feels safe, and customers have on their face masks, and away we go.
Good.
9% of our stores have reopened.
Good. That's awesome.
Wonderful.
That is good.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
All the best with all of you and your endeavors.
Yep.
So
See you
we'll talk to you Monday.
See everybody Monday.
Monday.
Yep.
Meeting adjourned.